there any situation, any trade where the Canucks actually win the trade? And Harmon, this is something obviously you just talked about. It's all three things. It's the cap space, of course. It's the players coming back. Like, what can you get from them? But I will say, when we talk about a return, and I brought up earlier in the show that rumored return of Lindgren, Hedel, and a first round pick. And people in the chat immediately got very upset. I will remind everyone that Bo Horvat was traded for Atu Ratu, a first round pick, and Anthony Beauvillier. Anthony Beauvillier was in that trade to make the money work. Okay? If that's your return, and I know everybody's going to point to Philip Hronek, that cost him a second round pick. Look at the trade alone. Because, yeah, maybe they'll go pivot and acquire a top four defenseman with something that they get from the Miller trade. But look at the trades in a vacuum here. Like, we've talked about what Miller's trade value actually is with that contract, with the movement clause, all those sort of things. And I've repeatedly admitted that we don't know what his trade value is. But to sit there and say that that return from the Rangers is god-awful and the Canucks need to walk away from it, I just don't know if I agree, because I don't know if you're coming at it from the perspective of we need to make a trade to shake up the locker room. And that's fine. If fans don't think that needs to happen, that's fine. But if that's what the team's deciding, like, I'm not sure that I'm looking at that return and saying that is brutal. They can't possibly accept a deal like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you go down the road of trading JT, you kind of have to accept, and this is the advice that I'd give Canucks fans, you're probably not going to get what you actually want. Like, the trade, if it happens, you'll get the notification on the Score app or on Twitter.
Canucks Army.
Canucks Army, wherever you see it, and you're going to see the initial maybe names and picks involved, and you're going to go, that's underwhelming. Like, I'd be shocked if there's any scenario where there's a trade and Canucks fans are excited at, like, whoa, look at what we got back. With it, because of the circumstances involved. You're talking about a guy with a no movement clause. You're talking about a guy who this season has been playing through injuries, which, if you're an acquiring team, like, that's got to worry you. His contract, keep in mind, he turns 32 years old, and is signed for a really long time. Like, there's risk attached to that contract. Teams are going to have question marks about locker room fit and being like, okay, like, whether it's true or not, what type of locker room fit is he going to be? He's a strong personality. How do we make sure that that is conducive to our winning environment? There are a lot of question marks. And of course, his play this year hasn't been very good.
Yep.
So all of it is kind of a perfect storm, especially because the Canucks are looking into options mid-season when there aren't a lot of teams with the requisite cap space. So your potential pool of partners is already limited. Like, the Canucks, like, are not negotiating from a strength of position at all. Now, to mention the specific Rangers package you were alluding to, yeah, that type of return on paper is underwhelming, but considering all the circumstances I laid out, it's not horrible.
I agree.
And the kicker would be, well, what are the details around that first round pick? Because if it's this year's first round pick and the Rangers obviously aren't in a playoff spot right now, that all of a sudden looks pretty attractive. And of course, that's where, the potential conditions involved being a reason the trade fell through. You can understand why there are complications around that. But that's what I would be most interested to know is, was that first round pick the Rangers' first this year? Because that all of a sudden, if you're talking about a first round pick in the teens, whether it be early teens, mid teens, late teens,
that's an impact player.
In the middle six center, like, that's not a great return, but it's not nothing.
Yeah.